Hello, listeners, and welcome to this week's episode of I Never Knew But My Dog Did podcast. I am Maureen Scanlon, your hostess. I am a master life coach and I specialize in self-worth, self-esteem, and self-confidence where we can overcome and learn the self-love that we need to live the most fulfilling life that we desire. As always, I'm going to say this, and I'm so redundant and I really don't care, but wow, do I have a guest for you today? And literally, we were talking offline, and I told her I could talk to you all day, but I need my listeners to get in on this conversation. And she's just absolutely amazing. So, as far as housekeeping stuff, let me get that out of the way. You know where to find me if you need coaching or my books, all that good stuff. So lifecoachmaureen.com. And also leave those reviews. We've been getting a lot of 5 stars. We're all 5 stars, in fact. And I love you all for that. And send me ideas, or if you want to be a guest and you feel like the audience or listeners can benefit from what you've been through, and you can be inspiring to others if it's something that moves you in your heart. So that being said, I got all of that out of the way. My guest today is Andrea Torrey Balsara. She is absolutely amazing. And I'm going to tell you in her words what she's been through. And when you hear her story and you see how she's overcome and how you see we can heal from anything, as impactful as things are. And as we go through life and things happen that are just they feel so terrible, or people think they're so terrible, there's a way out of it, and there's a reason why we're going through it. And so she says something that I absolutely love that I'm going to review with you listeners. So today, Andrea is passionate about helping people reframe their lives in terms of the hero's journey. She's had a long road of healing, and as she grew up not knowing who she truly was. When she was 5 years old, a trusted member of her grandparents' church separated her from her family on some pretext or other and molested her. When he told her it was her fault, she believed him. It was horrifying, so shattering that she dissociated from her body and buried the trauma deep within. That moment when she was separated from her true self was the beginning of her own hero's journey. Not knowing why she felt like a stranger in her own life and why she pushed people away, she expressed the inexpressible through writing, art, and faith, which I always believe there are healing properties. Even if you don't go to therapy or coaching, at least the beginning of it is the beginning of doing something that brings you joy. It's something I'm adamant about telling my clients: find something that brings you joy. If you're not ready to face the shadows and the darkness yet, find those things that bring you back to you. So over the years, as she regained the memory of what had happened, she used her own backstory for one of her characters, in her young adult novel, which I love fiction, The Great and the Small. She had suicide ideation. It was a constant siren song for her, but she kept striving to heal, to learn more about who she actually is. Whew, my heart already is like so heavy, but I know where we're going with this. This is really neat. What I love that you said, this is my favorite thing that Andrea says. If you take nothing away, listeners, please take this. Andrea believes that every trial and test brings with it gifts that can only be revealed through great suffering, like jack pines whose cones only open in the fire. Isn't that beautiful? I love that. Through her suffering, she realized she had a gift for healing others. And now she helps people find their way back to themselves. And she volunteers at a donkey sanctuary where she uses energy medicine to help injured and previously abused donkeys to heal. Full body chills. Animals are the most purest thing. And I love this. I can't wait to get into the donkey conversation. So welcome, Miss Andrea. I'm so happy that you're here. I cannot
Thank
wait
you.
to cover all of this stuff. You're an amazing inspiration, and I can't wait to hear your story. So what we do here on I Never Knew, of course, our first beginning is to let the listeners know where you came from, where the struggle was, where the the trauma came from. And so we call it your knee story. And I want you to tell us, when was this moment where maybe you were rediscovering the trauma, or just whatever profound moment where you decided, I'm on my knees and I can't go on like this, and something has to change and I have to do something different. Can you give us a story or a moment of your life?
Well, I was talking about this with my husband last night because I said, because I'd listened to the podcast, so I knew this question was coming, and I thought it it feels like my whole life has been an on my knees moment, quite frankly, because I've worked so hard to get back into my body and to feel like I belong. But PTSD is, as my husband says jokingly, is the gift that keeps on giving. And it's like, yeah, I'm healing. I'm on this healing journey, but it's not like, okay, now it's done. It's a constant thing. So, but I think the moment when it really was just like, okay, this is coming. I was in my first marriage, which was just, it was tragic. It was I won't get into details, but it was a very tragic situation. And I remember just feeling this sense of hopelessness. And one night I watched a program on this woman who'd been sexually abused, and she left her body and went into the wall. Her consciousness went into the wall so that she could stay safe. And as I'm watching this, I have zero recollection that I had been molested. None. All I knew was that my life was a train wreck. But as I'm watching this woman tell that story, I'm just like, I could hardly like what? And there was something in me that was going, it's kind of started going dong dong, these warning bells. And I was like, I don't know what that is. Over the next few years, I started to get counseling, and I ended up getting that memory back. So I guess I was ready. I was ready to finally see it. The beauty of our mind and our brain is that if you're not ready, it seals it off and it puts it aside so that you can live. And so finally it was like, you got to look at this. And so the memory came back, and it was like a black and white, like if back in the day when they had old projectors in the classroom, and the film would be like, black and white. That's what it was like. I was watching a black and white movie of myself being molested, that everything that happened, and suddenly everything made sense. And you would think that at that moment it was like, okay, I believe myself. It happened. That's not how it works. When you have encapsulated something and you've lived with believing that that didn't happen, the ability to believe in myself, the ability to finally be cohesive with myself, it's been lifelong. It's been almost 40 years since I had that memory. And even now, I'll catch myself thinking, did that really happen? And yet I've done so much work. I've done I know it happened, but there's a part of me that says, boy, it would be easier if I were just like seeking attention versus
Wow.
having to deal with this horrible thing. So that was kind of my moment where I just had to say, okay, I'm ready to see what actually happened.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Uh, there's so much to unpack there. The first thing is, like you said, you don't get over it. And
No.
you and I were talking offline, and I always say trauma's, like a file that you can either leave open on your desk or you put it
Yeah.
away. But it's still there, and the subconscious is just a memory bank.
Yeah.
The subconscious doesn't care feeling wise. It just says, these are the facts, ma'am, just the facts, ma'am.
Yeah.
something very interesting. I related the grief and trauma are very similar. People always say you never get over the death of someone. You never get over, you
Yeah.
just learn to cope with it. And I think trauma is the same way. There's no magical therapy that all of a sudden your 500th session, you're going to be like, okay, it's perfect. Everything's fantastic. What I love that you said that really I don't think I've ever heard this before. This is such a fun conversation. I always learn so much from everybody and I love that you brought this. So my grandson brought up something the other day and he said that he has a lot of trauma blocking.
Mm.
We have guardianship of my grandson due to some of the things that happened in his youth. And I'll ask him about his childhood, and he'll say, Grandma, I don't remember anything about my childhood. He goes, because I do that trauma blocking. And it was like, wow, when you said that, where you're like, I didn't have any recollection of it. Then when you learned about it, opened it up, started really facing the pain and the learning how to understand yourself, then you did
Mhm.
this self-critical questioning, which I've never really heard. Most people, when they've opened Pandora's box and said, I had this trauma that I remember, okay, I know this happened and I'm going to deal with this. And I've been doing these things to help cope, whatever. And you literally said, I still was questioning if that even happened, knowing that it did, but would it be easier if it was something else, like getting attention like that to me? Oh, it just breaks my heart because you want to make an excuse for why the trauma happened, right?
Yeah.
Tell me more
It's,
about that. How does that wave come on for you, and how often does that happen when you do this self-critical questioning?
I'm still dealing with it. I, it's like an onion that just keeps having more layers. So, the first layer was like acknowledging, oh, this probably happened. This happened. And then, your defenses come up and you keep like having to relearn, oh, it happened. It happened. And you have to keep kind of working with your brain, which did great protecting you so you could live, but now you've got this disassociation issue
Yeah.
where I used to feel like I was ahead and like I just like my body was like a sock connected to my neck. I felt like, and the book that I wrote, The Great and the Small, which we can talk about later, the girl in it, I talk about the disassociation. So she sees her arms and they feel like wooden arms and she can hardly lift them. And so for me it was a way of expressing this pain that I'd always felt of being like a stranger in my own body or an observer as I'm almost like I'm a drone above my body as it's doing things. Um, I forgot what your question was.
The self-critical questioning where, because it does sound like you go back and forth between
Yeah.
survival and thriving. So your mind
Oh
does
yeah,
this self-critical questioning for, do you think it just does it to continue protection if
I think
again
so.
it sort of keeps
Yeah.
popping up? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I had
Wow.
to acknowledge that it was just my brain, my mind trying to protect me. That's all it
Yeah.
was. Even the self-criticism
Mhm.
is a way, if you criticize yourself enough, you stay small and hidden. And if you're hiding, no one can hurt you.
Mm.
So,
That's so true. I know
yeah,
one of the things that I had done was self-deprecating
yeah,
humor. If I cut myself down first, you can't do it. And it was almost
right.
like that was a protection. So if you know anyone that does that, that does this sort of make fun of themselves thing, there's a reason for that because they're trying to put it out there before you can. Like I'm gonna say this about myself. I can deal if I say it about me. But if you say it about me, it hurts.
Oh,
And
oh
there
yeah.
is such a
Yeah.
difference. You also made me think about when you talk about how your body wasn't a part of you. I think about um people that do harm, like bodily harm, like cutting is a
Yeah.
very significant thing. It's people can't understand it. Why would people want to cut themselves? But it is a way to get it out,
I
and there's
agree.
no other way, especially your teenagers. I know that my
Yeah,
grandson struggled with that, and you have no other outlet. And I think outlets are so crucial. So when you see anyone who's doing any kind of bodily harm, whether it's an eating disorder
yeah,
or, even there's addictions to the gym, to exercise, like
yeah,
just almost punishing yourself for
right,
what you had gone through,
right.
because we haven't dealt with the fact that it's not our fault. We are not to blame. This other person is to blame. So when you discovered this, were you able to share this with your family, your parents? What happened when you were like, okay, I have to tell you this thing, or did you?
Well, I really tried to remember. And unfortunately, in trying to remember, I think I added things that hadn't actually happened. I was just trying to be very analytical about it,
Mm.
so I could prove that it wasn't just crazy Andrea again being dramatic, that this actually happened. And so, like I'm like, and then I think that happened, and then that happened, I think, and I wrote this big thing to my parents, and they were just like, we don't know. Like this, we have no recollection of this happening. The pedophiles are very crafty, and they're not going to go up and say, in a shifty way, hey, let me take your child from you. No, they're like, let's go. I'll get her some cookies. It'll be great. We'll have fun. And that's what happened. Part of my memory was having a cookie, and it felt like sawdust in my mouth, but that was the pretext. And they had no memory of it. Like my parents didn't know because nobody suspected this person. And so when they initially they weren't able to give me that confirmation. And they even questioned, like, we don't know what this is about. It just was like, tail spinning. And then later I realized when I actually got more of the real memory, I realized that a lot of the things that I had written down were just me trying to construct a narrative that was about 70% blocked from me. I think I'm still blocking probably half of it,
Mm.
and I'm not sure I need to see it all.
Mm.
I'm not sure I need to see it all anymore. I just need to learn to be at peace with it. And I have. I have forgiven the man who abused me. I'm still working on forgiving myself, to be quite frank.
Mm.
I think as a little child, when you're told, you know, if you hadn't have done this, I wouldn't have had to do this to you. If you weren't that way, a little 5-year-old believes that. And a little 5-year-old, wants to be good. They want to be good. And so in my heart, I hid it not only from myself, but from God.
Mm.
I was like, I'll just be so good and I'll earn my way into being good enough. And so I did all sorts of things. I've done all sorts of things trying to be good enough, trying to earn my way. And even now at 60 years old, I'm like, am I doing this to try to earn my way to goodness? Or am I doing this action because of joy?
Mm.
Because it gives me joy to paint. It gives me joy to write. It gives me joy to share. That's where life is. This other one is just being a prisoner to a really, really old event that happened 55 years ago.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Uh, You're amazing because you're really bringing forth things that I know there's a listener out there going, no one's ever said that. No one's ever said that, Maureen. The forgiving yourself, part of that, I think many, people who have been a victim of abuse, there's always that blame. And there's no way anyone would look at a 5-year-old who was abused and say that it was their fault. But what's interesting, what was going through my mind about the cookie thing is not only do pedophiles and abusers, when it comes to children, groom the child, they groom the parents.
Yes.
As a crime junkie, absolutely enthralled with the psychology of crime. I realize how many of them get in with the parent first to give the opportunity to do it with the child, and the being good part of it is, and that's the conflict. I think that's the contrast for you was, I want to be good, but then there's this also this other part of, I wasn't supposed to do that because that wasn't good. And yet I'm supposed to obey authority. And so I did this thing, and
Right.
my parents were okay with me going with this
Yeah.
person, but you never had consent. You didn't weren't supposed to consent to that. You're 5 years old. You were never supposed to be treated that way or abused or taken advantage of. So I love that so much that you said, I still work on forgiving myself. And listeners, I know that sounds crazy. Like, why do you have to forgive yourself? You were 5 years old. You did nothing wrong. But that's our
Yeah.
outside perspective.
That's the adult. That's the
Yes.
adult. The child inside is still like, you know, to this day, I have been working on the fear of what if they find out? What have I done? And I used to wake up every morning with this feeling of terror, this dread. It was like if you found yourself in the morning and you wake up and you find yourself in a coffin and you're banging on the thing and let me out, help, help. That kind of terror where there's no escape. And I was like, oh, I must be afraid of, being victimized again. And I realized I think it was about a year ago, it just like struck me. It was like it hurt so much to realize it wasn't about the fear of being abused again. It was the fear of being discovered of what I had done, quote in quotes, of what I had done, because the 5-year-old me felt responsible. And I can't, like, anybody out there who's been abused as a child, you know what that feels like. And it is horrible. The shame that and I have been given so many gifts, so much love to help me move through that shame. And even so, it sometimes it has been almost unbearable, where I could hardly put my foot in front of the other. And yet there has been just enough love and kindness and like when I've been at the end of at the end of my rope, I might hear a voice a voice, a loving voice that isn't my own, that just says, like I have been in some ways driven, as a writer, as an artist. I've got to produce, I've got to make books, I've got to do this, I've got to be famous, I've got to do, the proving myself again. I've got to earn my way. And one day I'm there, like going, oh, I've got to do this. And this woman's voice in my mind said very gently, Andrea, you're supposed to enjoy this too. And I
Oh,
was like, oh, I'm supposed to enjoy creating. It's been given to me as a gift to enjoy.
wow. I love that so much. And we know those are your guides.
I know.
As a spiritual guide medium, I can tell you it is definitely one of your guides.
Yeah,
I'm not doing a reading with you right now, but I do have full body chills, so I do know that your guides have been there for you. And it's funny because it's not until we're ready to hear those
I
guides
know.
that they've been there all along. One of the things I recognized with my own um, trauma was I diminished it, and I did not have loving people around me. We were talking about this offline where, God, it's so wonderful you had so many loving people that planted these seeds of love for you. But if you're like me, listeners, and you didn't have loving people around you, and it was more, it kept amplifying more and more of how I was not worthy. So then my behaviors kept repeating the chasing the love, the trying to earn someone to love me or even like me. And I would diminish because it was swept under the rug. This was not something you talked about. And, God bless my parents. They're just continuing a generational thing over and over
Yeah.
where they believed that you were crazy if you went to therapy, or you were crazy if you needed counseling, or you were crazy. And ironically,
Yeah.
that I'm in mental health now is, you just were
Yeah.
not allowed to speak on those things. And like you said, the self-critical questioning, I was thinking, oh my gosh, I diminished like what happened. I had some incidents with adults myself when I was younger, and I'm thinking, I just diminished it like it was no big deal. And I still to this day are like, oh God, that was no big deal. Even as a mental health advocate, for, what I do for a living, I still haven't dealt with the fact that that was wrong. There's the shame.
Yeah.
I diminish it or I self-deprecate. Therefore, it doesn't impact me. So that's a really cool perspective that you said you're supposed to have joy. And I think if there's anything we take away from this, I'm going to take away from this because I'm a hustler too. I'm like, I have 5 businesses. I got coaching podcasts. I have a dog boutique. I'm a writer.
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
God. But you're right. Maybe we sometimes can run from things instead of sitting there saying, and I'm passionate about spreading a message about self-love, but sometimes, the doctor gets sick, right?
Right.
And I feel like the mechanic's car is broke. I do. I think you're absolutely right. We have to like stop it. I found myself doing the same thing where I would take a week or two off, whether it was forced on me medically or whatever, and realize the sky wasn't falling because I
I
didn't
know.
do a
I know.
podcast
It's like,
that week.
I know.
So that's a
I
great
know.
perspective to say to the audience. You know what, guys? Find joy in it. Don't. I love the questioning when you said, "Am I doing this to prove something, or am I doing this out of joy?"
Yeah.
I love that. So when did you discover the energy healing part of this? I can't wait to find out how that
Oh,
probably sort of just completely changed the whole trajectory for you, I bet.
gosh, we're talking about gifts that come that you don't expect. If you'd asked me, like 10 years ago, oh, are you a healer? I've been like, no. I'm a writer. I'm an artist.
Right.
So, but the PTSD, it doesn't go away on its own. And I was just like, this is not going to define me. I am not going to stay in this cycle of suffering forever. I'm not destined for that. I'm destined for joy. I know that. And then one day I saw this, I think I was watching a YouTube thing or something, and there was this ad for energy medicine. I'm like, huh, I click on it, and and I signed up for a course. And it was through Eden Energy. And I felt so much better doing these exercises. And so I contacted them, and they had this foundations course. So I took that. That was a year-long course. And then so I'm like, I'm feeling pretty good. And by this time I was also volunteering at a donkey sanctuary. Just, I was out there scooping poops and getting hay and all that stuff and getting hugs from donkeys, and it was wonderful. And but I told the sanctuary owner, Sheila, that I had been, that I have PTSD and some days are better than others. And I mean, even going to the sanctuary was hard for me because I felt like I kind of had no skin. And now I know it was because my aura was collapsed. But
Mm.
I felt like I was just walking around like a peeled nerve. So it was very, very uncomfortable, but I loved the donkeys, and I knew that I just needed to kind of get out of my comfort zone, get out of the house basically. And one day, a donkey came who was really sick, and he was dying. And Sheila just said, "Andrea, can you work your magic on him?" Those were her words. And I was like, "Well, I've only learned this on humans, but I'll try." And and I'm starting to visualize this light within this donkey, and I'm trying to see like this light within him, and I started seeing it. And so I'm like, I started to just imagine it expanding out like you would take, like the old day, the taffy pulls where you'd pull taffy. So I just imagined holding this light within this donkey. His name was Darwin. And I just imagined like pressing it out around him so that he had like this beautiful orb of energy around him. And I just kept working with him. And he survived. And he went on to live another year and a half. Um, and so now I work with the donkeys every weekend. Um, they've been an incredible part of my own healing because I could learn, and I went through year two then after that as well. So I'm in the new year, I'm going to be certifying as a certified practitioner. But the thing was, when I worked with people, I still had this sometimes it's hard for me to connect with people in person. Because of the trauma, I still kind of get static, if you will. Like it's difficult for me sometimes.
Yeah.
But with donkeys, I know that they won't judge me. I know that I'm safe with them. I know that all these things that I have in the back of my head with human relationships, they don't care about those things. Donkeys are just loving. And so they've given me the chance to work on how to do healing. And I have expanded my skills to the point where now I can work on people and I feel safe doing so. And it's just, to me, it's such a miracle and such a gift that my whole life, if I look back and I say, would I do it again? The answer is yes. Yes. There's so much more joy. And that joy, when you have been hollowed out by trauma, by whatever you've been through, when you feel like you've been gutted, the wonderful mystery and joy of life is that if you keep going with sincerity and you keep moving forward, you keep trying to find the light, that furrow in you will be filled with joy. And the people who have never been hollowed out will never reach that level of joy because they have not been in that abyss. They haven't had to climb out of it. And when you have that depth of suffering that has been carved into you, the joy just has more to fill.
Ugh. I just adore you because I could not agree with you more. I always say the greater the pain, the greater the growth. And I know that the most loving, and this is my get to, and I meet everyone who's been through the most traumatic things, such as yourself. And the people that I meet who've had so much pain and gutted, I love that verbiage. You've been gutted, but they filled it with compassion and
Yeah,
resilience and the willingness to pay it forward to their fellow human. I feel like we
yes,
we break down to build back up. And I'm with you. I know there's a lot of people who would say, I would never go through my trauma again. I would too. I would go through it. Because if I didn't, I wasn't able to create the ripples that have changed hundreds, possibly thousands of lives on this planet. And that's what I want to do. That's why I'm here. That's why my guide said, hey, we've got this assignment for you, Maureen. It's not going to be fun the first few years, the first 45
yeah,
years, but it's going to be fun after that because we know you can handle it. We know you're strong and we know that you have a purpose. And when it comes to the animals, oh, you just melt my heart. I was watching a show yesterday on Discovery Channel, Secrets of the Zoo. Oh, I told my husband, I said, next lifetime, I'm working at a zoo because I'm so excited when I hear, they got these two, I forget the name of these, but they're two Asian pigs. They were kept them separated for a minute and brought the male in, and then, they were getting to know each other. Just the fun of watching the pureness of animals is
yeah.
Oh my gosh. There was a manatee who got injured by a boat and she was pregnant. The baby was
Oh,
okay. And then they took the manatee in and they were
yeah,
healing the manatee. But whether it's dogs or donkeys,
yeah.
man, do they have something to teach. And they have shorter lives because they don't need to undo all the things that we have to undo and unthink and unlearn. And, we're crazy people. I mean, we humans just have a mind that either works completely against us or completely for us, and sometimes a mix of both. But that's the same with me when I wrote the books. The discovery for me was when my dogs were looking at me, I was overcoming a lot of narcissistic, painful, abusive relationships. Finally, I broke up with the last one, and I'm sitting there just boohooing, why? And my dog's looking at me just with the purest, beautiful love, and I'm crying. And I just had that epiphany, aha moment. I'm like, they love me exactly as I am right this moment. They don't care what my hair looks like. They don't care if I got makeup on. They don't care, if snot's running down my face from crying. They don't care. They love me.
I know.
Why can I not love myself that unconditionally? And so that same here when I wrote the book, my dog is more enlightened than I am. We could say my donkey is more enlightened than I am,
Yeah.
or my manatee is more enlightened than I am, because the pureness of animals, and I say babies like young children, the pureness of them being
Yeah.
so close to spirit and so unadulterated. Just I all I can see is
There's
just
no
you.
ego. There's no ego.
Yes.
They don't have an ego.
Yes. Oh my gosh. They're all the good parts of what we want to be. They are all of it, and there's no bad parts in it. Ours is good parts, sort of in this um the nucleus is that we're good, and the
Yeah.
outside is we do a lot of
Can
silly,
be
bad
complicated.
choices. Yeah. And so I can't even imagine. Dora went, oh, I can't even imagine how much fun that is. And then what I love is when I see you and I, the discovery of these gifts. We didn't do this on purpose. I didn't become a medium. I'm going to train to be a medium. No,
No.
it happened when
Yeah.
I started coaching because I'm passionate about it. I'm passionate about helping be the voice my younger self needed. And then the messages came. Then, like you said, the aura was collapsed, and,
Yeah.
learning just the visuals. I think a lot of people think I can't meditate, Maureen, because I don't know if I'm just kind of making it up in my mind or if it's really true. My thought on that is anything that comes into your mind is true. You decipher what you want as far as clarity goes, because I'm not great at silent meditation. I'm more of a, like you, I'm more of a creative. I have to
Mhm.
have music going and TV going while I'm writing, or while I have
Mhm.
all this stuff going on, being neurodivergent. But that's my meditation, because I get
Mhm.
these juices. If you get me at 1 a.m., oh, I could move mountains at 1 a.m. I mean, it's just crazy. My creative juices have a midnight to, or like a 10 p.m. to 2 a.m., like
Huh.
high point. But I just
Cool.
love that you said that. So if someone were listening right now and said, wow, I am stuck in this trauma, I'm just discovering it, and I think therapy is good. I always say therapy is for uncovering and coaching is for recovering. That's the way I look
Yeah.
at it. We work hand in hand and we complement one another. What would you suggest, either energetic wise, or, do you suggest therapy, or do you suggest something else like just art, start painting or start crocheting? What's your first suggestion when someone says, wow, I've got a lot of trauma and I don't know how to deal with this, Andrea? What do I do?
I would say it's probably a multi-pronged approach because we are complex. Personally, I believe that spirituality is really important. That people, when you are in the depth of trauma, you feel so alone. You feel like you're the biggest freak of the world. Everybody else is fine except you. That's how I felt. And what connecting to a higher power does is it helps you realize not only do you harness more of your strength and you have hope that there's something beyond this pain, you you realize you're not alone. And it starts to open your perspective that not only are you not alone, there are a lot of people who are also suffering. And it helps you to have the faith to reach out to others, to not hide. I would say that what you said about finding joy, doing something that makes you joyful is so important. And it might be very simple. And it might be something that you do alone. You know, when you've been really traumatized, being around people can be like, an assault sometimes. It can feel like, especially if you don't have a strong aura or you don't have any aura, it can feel like there's no defense. Somebody thinks something, at you, or they look at you the wrong way, and it feels like a spear going through you, like, so find something that makes you feel joyful. And if that means you have a quiet room where you might have, I don't know if you can see behind, I have all sorts of really cool things that make me feel really happy. Just things like crystals. I have, like I have a big chunk of pink quartz right here. Just things that make me feel in my body that I'm connected. I'm here. I'm not out floating and, so find that space. It might mean that if you don't have like a space of your own, you might have music playing or something, and you can write. And a wonderful thing to do when you're writing, if you are someone who likes to journal, you can journal, but you can also journal if you're like stuck and you cannot get past something. You can ask a question. Okay, so with your right hand, and this is actually from The Artist's Way. I got this from Julia Cameron's book, The Artist's Way. You write a question. So for me, it would be Big Andrea asks a question. So why are you sad? And then with my left hand, this is little Andrea, I would say, well, today I feel really sad because, and then, and you would be really surprised at how fast you can go kind of under all the conscious stuff and dig right into your subconscious. So I would say that kind of journaling where you really start to get to a place where you can start to have compassion for yourself, where you really start to learn, oh, I'm not just being dramatic. This was extremely painful. Look how brave I've been. Look what I've gotten through. Look what I've done. Wow, and you start to see yourself as you would see someone that you love. So someone that you love, you would never say, wow, why are you crying? Stop being such a baby. You would say, well, tell me what's the matter. Wow, look what you've been through. Look how strong and brave you are. And so when we start journaling and we connect to that, our really deep inner self, we can be like, wow, I'm getting to know myself as this soul, and I'm really proud of myself. So there's that. And then also just the visual, like for me, I'm very hands-on. I need to be very tactile with art and, hearing the scratch of a pencil on paper or feeling the paint move, with a brush. It just makes me feel joyful. I don't know why. Um, but it might be for someone, working on a car or going for a walk or grooming a dog or, whatever makes you feel like, there's something in you that just starts to smile. That's really good. And then for energy, I would say that our thoughts have incredible power. So if you're feeling really sad, the first thing to do, what I would do is rub your hands together and shake them off, and then cross them over your heart. And you can like just rock yourself just a little bit and smile. We have all of these energy systems, and one of them is called, they're called the the strange flows is one word for them, but in Eden energy, they're called radiant circuits. And the radiant circuits are all about joy. And when you smile, it actually starts to make the radiant circuits kind of take notice and they start to light up. And so you can just sit there just simply like that and start smiling. And then and another thing you can do is put one hand on your forehead, another hand on your heart, or if you're really frightened, if you're really in a cycle of fear, you can put your hand right behind your eyes and just breathe. And and eventually you'll start to feel this pulsing between your hands. And that means that that log jam of energy of fear that's been stuck back there is moving. So I do this about once a day because energy is like it's like the Great Lakes, they just keep like cycling through how they cycle through a complete recycling of water, but it takes time and
Yeah.
all this stuff keeps coming up. When you have trauma, you have all of this stuff that just keeps coming up, ready to be healed. Like we can reframe this. It doesn't have to be, oh, I'm feeling this again. It can be, I'm ready to see this now. Now I'm ready to heal this. And so we can look at this as a gift. We can hold it, as we hold our heart, as we hold our head or here, hand over our over our heart. And we can breathe and we can be present with those things that are really painful
Yeah.
and just be aware of this is soul school for humans. This is not meant to be easy. It's not. I wish it was. I wish it could be pain free because honestly that would be great. I don't like being in pain, but that's not how we learn. We usually learn through like taking that next step, deciding to keep trying, even though we're not sure what we're doing, deciding to keep going, even though these same problems keep coming up, and we're like, I don't know if I'm ever going to get through this, but just continuing to try, that resilience.
I love all of those and I agree. And there's so many techniques that I do the same thing. I call it a joy altar. When
Yeah,
you need to forget everything else, just I have one as well. I've got a little Buddha and I've got all my crystals
yeah,
and I've got, my precious dog Brody's ashes and his paw. It's when you need to forget everything, just sit at your joy altar and look at those things that bring you joy and put it, pictures of family if you want. I have a singing bowl and, all that
yeah,
fun stuff. So I love that so
yeah,
much. And I agree with you so much on the fact that it's going to come up, but what's cool about it is, you know what? There's no growth in sameness. There's no growth
no,
in stagnation. So
no,
we have to be grateful for the change. And when that change comes, you change that mindset. I always say to my clients, just reframe. Why is this happening? Because I can handle it. And
yeah,
I've handled this and I've handled this and I've done this and I forgot about that. And I always tell people when they come for my coaching, I say, um, I'm not here to talk about the things that are bad about you. I'm here to reinforce the things that are good about you. So you'll forget the things that
yeah,
are, but which I don't think we have bad and good. We have choices, we have outcomes, and we have reactions. And as a relationship expert and helping people with toxic family members, especially with the holidays, oh my goodness, toxic relationships, whether it's, romantic relationships, work relationships, a lot of toxicity in workplaces, or families who you feel like I can't just throw my family away, but we can learn that I don't have to be affected by it. Like you said, some people have sort of a jello shield. That's
mhm,
not enough. I say have a heart guard, have a Fort Knox heart guard where you've got the control over what's
yeah,
going to affect you, who you give your energy to, what's allowed. And I always say to myself, I take ownership of what happened to me because I allowed it. And that was me as an adult. This does not apply to children. No child allows abuse. So
Right.
we're going to make that very, very clear right now. But as an adult, I allowed what happened to me. It wasn't good, and there were times when, I'm certain that I had no choice or I was pinned against a wall, but I will own that because that empowers me to say I have a choice to allow it or not allow it. And going forward now, I'm not going to allow it. So that's really a fun little change. So as we close up, I want you to tell everyone where to get your book and where to find you for energy healing and donkey sanctuary, everything. It's your time to shine. Tell us everything about you, websites, all that.
Okay, well, this is my book, The Great and the Small, and it's also illustrated. I did the illustrations in it as well. Um, and as I said, it's about a girl who's haunted by buried trauma. And it's also a fantasy novel. So there's two perspectives, which I just love. One of the perspectives is from the point of view of a rat. So I wrote part of the story to look at what happened, the cost of blind obedience. So this little rat Finn is in this rat colony, and his uncle is the beloved chairman, who is this Stalin-esque, very charismatic leader, and he declares war on humanity using the bubonic plague. And so as hell is breaking loose, Ananda, the teenage girl, she has a kind of a sixth sense with being able to communicate with animals. And so she and Finn's paths cross, and she ends up saving him from death. And a later part in the book, their paths cross again. She rescues him from a rat trap, and she secretly nurses him back to health. And as he's being nursed back to health, he realizes that all of the things that his uncle has told him, the two legs are, there's the only good leg, two leg is a dead two leg, this kind of thing. His eyes are opened, and he realizes now that he has to make a choice where he has to choose, do I follow my uncle and until every last two leg is dead, or do I rebel and seek truth? And Ananda has the same kind of trajectory where she's also running from the truth of this horrible thing that she's just been pushing down. She has no memory of it. So in that case, she's modeling what I did. Um, and and it's about her choosing, does she live? Is she going to choose life? And in that case, she has to face whatever this thing is. And so it's this story of these two very different people or creatures, um, both seeking the light through the darkness. And if people go to my website, it's www.torreybalsara.com. Do you want me to spell that or?
I'll have that in our show notes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, basically, if they go to the landing page, this book is like front and center because I'm really proud of it. And there's like a buy link on there. And I'm also on Instagram, Facebook, and I am starting to post more to YouTube. So yeah.
Yay! Well, we're going to connect for sure. So TorreyBalsara.com.
Yes.
And I need an autographed copy of that for my grandson because, boy, I think that would be right up his alley. He's a reader. That would be amazing for him. So I can't wait to talk to you about that. Okay, well, this is amazing. Well, since we got so much beautiful information from you, and it's all very heavy, and we're all gonna just, we're gonna breathe and we're gonna just process it. So we're gonna end with something light. And this is one of my segments, and I want you to choose a number between 1 and 7.
7.
7 is, I like this one. Oops. All right. So for 7, sorry, I'm having issues. These are my papers. Oh my gosh. Um, Ooh, I love this. So number seven is and I don't think we've done this one yet. Seven is a segment I call Who's My Pack? And I want to know if you were a dog, what breed would you be and why?
Hmm. I would be, what do they call it? Heinz 57? Yeah.
A little bit of everything,
Yeah,
right?
I do a little bit of everything because I
Yeah.
just, I'm a Baha'i, and part of our belief is that humanity is one, that all of our diversity, the belief in unity and diversity. So I'm like, you know what, if I was a dog, I'd want to be a little bit of everything, just be like
I
I
love
guess,
it.
yeah.
I love it. That fits you so well because you just are a piece of everything. There's so many pieces to you, and you can find a way to connect with anyone, any piece of you to anyone who has that piece. So thanks for humoring me on that. I love that so much. So that's going to wrap us up for today, listeners. I hope you enjoyed Andrea as much as I did. Again, this is my get to. I would never get to experience such an amazing conversation, an amazing person such as Andrea. So I'm grateful for you all for being here to listen because that's why I do this. So you get something out of it. So leave those reviews, please, please. I appreciate you so much. And let's see, that'll wrap us up. My books, My Dog is More Enlightened Than I Am. My Dog is My Relationship Coach. And my children's book. Where are we? My children's book, My Dog Bexley is Just Like Me,
Oh,
is for my six and unders that tells our little guys right from the beginning when they're children that feelings are okay. It's okay to be
yeah.
scared. It's okay to be happy. It's okay to take care of yourself. You have to eat. You have to take naps. So it's repetitive. It helps with reading, and you can substitute your dog's name for Bexley's name and make it more relatable to those little guys. And all I can say is my 16-month-old granddaughter, it is her absolute favorite book, not just because Mimi wrote it and Mimi's picture is on the back, but it's fun and she likes the repetition. So again, y'all can find me for relationship coaching, self-confidence, self-love coaching at Maureen or Life Coach Maureen.com. So I love you all for being here. Don't forget to check in at our doggy boutique where I make homemade healthy treats, paw bombs, shampoos, reversible bandanas that are handmade, along with lots of other fun stuff, especially with the holidays. Go buy some gifts. That is mydoggiseverything.net. So until next week, you guys take care and make sure you go buy Andrea's book and leave her comments. If you want to get a hold of Andrea, you can also contact me on my Life Coach Maureen page. And until next week, everybody, please, please be safe out there and take care. I love you all. Mwah.